I guess let's just enjoy words on pages together. The way this tension is written, my brain is working so hard to keep up with this book. Hi everyone, it's me. Welcome to today's video. We're just gonna have the best reading week, okay? I have decided that is what's gonna happen this week. I basically have a lot of books on my physical TBR that I just predict will be a 5 stars. Like, I am 98% sure that the books we're gonna be reading this week will be perfect 5-star reads, and so I just decided, why not read them back to back to back and see if we can actually create the perfect reading week and just have the best time ever. So, concept of this reading vlog is simple. We're just gonna find incredible reads, and that's it. Starting with our first read. This is The Young Will Remember by Eve J. Chung. Now, I have talked about this book a couple times on this channel just in anticipation with reading it. You guys know I've been really excited to pick this one up ever since I got it. What was it, like 1 to 2 months ago? I did actually start nibbling into this last night. I've read about 60 pages. I was just too excited. I had to start last night. I couldn't wait until this morning. I'm so sorry. But so far, I am actually indeed loving it, which is a great sign. So this is a historical fiction. We're set in 1950 during the Korean War. So our protagonist is Ellie. She's actually a Chinese-American journalist that has flown overseas to be a correspondent during this war. And at the very beginning of this story, while she's flying, you know, she's on a mission to get stories, the plane that she's on actually gets shot down, and she thinks this is going to be the end. She's going to be captured in North Korea. But in this twist of events, a North Korean woman, actually claims Ellie as her lost daughter that she lost in the previous war. And so Ellie kind of goes along with this. She gets sort of taken in by this family, and they kind of start looking out for each other. And while this family is really helping Ellie out, I think eventually Ellie also starts helping them out and starts helping this woman actually find her real daughter, who was actually lost in the previous war. And this is supposed to be a story about, you know, women bonding during tough times. And I think this one's going to be really emotional, and it's really going to hit me deep in the feelings, and I think it's going to be really great. So yeah, I did nibble into this a little bit, and I am really liking it so far. I think what's really interesting about this so far is the fact that our protagonist is a Chinese American, because while we're set in 1950, racism, of course, you know, was a lot more widespread, prevalent than it is today. And while Ellie as a character has been kind of like accustomed, she's grown used to facing this racism, being thrown into this war environment actually is making that even more complicated and more layered. So now not only is she facing prejudice because she appears, you know, Chinese, she's Oriental, as they call it. And some of the Americans are still finding it hard to kind of trust her, to kind of get along with her and naturally welcome her into their circles. She's now also, you know, in this environment where you're from actually really matters. Like, are you Korean? Are you North Korean? Are you South Korean? Are you Japanese? Are you Chinese? Are you American? Like, who are you? Where are you from? What side of the war are you on? There's so much importance in that in a setting like this, obviously. And so Ellie's really finding this hard time because she's American. She's an American journalist. So that's like the side she's on, but she is Chinese. So on one hand, you know, a lot of the Americans in the story like can't really tell what type of Asian she is. And then also when she gets kind of stranded in North Korea, there's also some confusion there of like, wait, are you Chinese? Are you American? Like, but you kind of speak Mandarin, but you also kind of speak Japanese because you learned that language. Like, there's a lot of topic of ethnic ambiguity in the story, and I'm finding that to be really interesting. And I'm hoping we dive deeper into that because honestly, I've read a decent amount of historical fiction, I'd say, and I've read a decent amount of war setting historical fiction, and I haven't really encountered a story that dives deep into this. So I'm definitely excited to see that that is, you know, a really prevalent theme in this story, because that is something, you know, that you don't really think about sometimes in these type of stories, is that if you see someone from a distance approaching you, you don't know who they are, you kind of have to wait to see them get closer so you can kind of identify like, oh, what color are they wearing? Like, what type of uniform are they wearing? What badges do they have? And slowly, as they get closer, you start kind of like seeing these identifying markers of like, oh, what side is that person on? Are they a friend or are they an enemy? Are they on the other side? And immediately, right off the bat, we're getting so many moments like that in this book. So needless to say, I'm excited to continue reading this. I am getting along with the writing style so far. It is quite simply written, which I think helps with something like a historical fiction that can feel a little bit factual. You don't really want, or at least I don't really want, a historical fiction to feel like a textbook. So I feel like this sort of simpler writing style is working well for me, and I'm just excited to continue. So I'm gonna continue reading The Young Will Remember today, and I'm just really excited to kick off this reading week. I think we're gonna have a great time in this reading vlog. So I guess let's just enjoy words on pages together. I have made it to just around the halfway point of The Young Will Remember, and I'm loving this. I am really enjoying this. It is living up to my expectations still at this point, which is amazing. There are so many things I'm loving about this. As we're getting to know our characters a little bit more, I do find it really interesting to read because our main characters have very different beliefs. They have different values. They're obviously rooting for different sides. You know, they're on different sides of the war, but as they're getting to know each other and as they, you know, they're humans, they're connecting. Obviously, they have things in common with their life that they can connect with, and they can understand each other's pain and grief and everything and their motivations. There is still this underlying tension between them that comes out in certain moments in the book where they can't help but think like, oh, your people are doing this to my people, and my people are just trying to defend what we love, what we own, like what's rightfully ours. And so yeah, these moments will come up where it's like, your people did this, your people did this, my people are just trying to survive, and all sides believe this kind of for themselves. It's something that's obviously, you know, really hard to let go of, to kind of accept that maybe your side is not completely innocent and the other side is also not completely innocent, and we're all just humans in this terrible situation where the government suck, basically. So that's definitely really interesting to read. I also think the story is just so engaging, and it's very unpredictable because things are changing day to day, and I think that also feels really realistic to a war situation like this as well. Like, one day you might have certain priorities. You might be like, oh, going here is the best route for me, but then the next day something very dramatic happens, something very horrific happens in the war, and that instantly changes your immediate priorities. It's like, okay, well, I was planning on going there yesterday, but now that's not really an option, or that's not really the best option, so maybe I should do this instead. And I think just seeing our characters need to like let go of things, let go of their long-term goals, and just like survive in the moment, really. I think that's also making the story just really engaging and really intriguing, and you never know what's going to happen next. So yeah, overall really loving this. I mean, to the core of it, this story is about humans, like humans that are truly more than just where they came from, where they grew up, where they were born, where they were raised, all of that. So still really loving this. I have about 200 pages left to go, I think, in this book, so I'm going to continue reading. Definitely really invested in what happens to our characters here, and I feel like I am learning a lot about the intricacies of the Korean War as well. Like, again, it's a war that I knew kind of broad strokes of what happened, but historical fiction, I feel like, always just gives me a more like on the ground eye level view of what happened in terms of the people, the civilians that were involved. And obviously, you know, this is a fictional story, but I'm sure a lot of things were taken from real life stories and accounts of things that really happened. So yeah, I'm just gonna continue reading this. All right, we did it. first 5-star of the week. I told you guys this was going to be a wonderful reading week. This was so good, and immediately I need to obtain Eve J. Chung's other book, what is it called? The Daughters of Shandong. I need to add that to my physical TBR because I'm obsessed with her storytelling and her writing now. This was really just an all-encompassing story, and I think something like this can kind of sometimes be intimidating to dive into. Obviously, some of the things we're facing in this book are things that are hard to stomach, hard to face. Like, we're in a very tough environment with this, obviously, and horrific things happen to these people who, like, you know, no one deserves these things happening to them. But I think with kind of more approachable writing style like this, it definitely makes it just easier to face. I do feel like that was kind of done on purpose because from the point where we started, I mean, our characters had already faced things at that point, but our protagonist especially, she was just kind of getting into it. And I think the way she just thought about everything, she had a bit more innocence at the beginning of the book. And as we went on through the story, I feel like the writing kind of reflected that. We started getting, you know, deeper insights into things. And that subtle shift in the writing style as the book went on, I think really, yeah, just did a really good job at reflecting what our character was going through. And I think subtle changes in writing style like that, I don't know how authors do it. It seems like it would be a really tough thing to do that subtly and not have it feel jarring to have your writing style kind of shift throughout the book. But it happened, yeah, so naturally and gradually that, you know, at one point I was like, if I was annotating this book, I could highlight like every other line because there were so many deeply powerful sentences in this book that just, you know, said a lot. Yeah, I don't think I have any faults, you know, about this book. I don't think there's anything I could really critique or criticize. I think it was just so well done. So yeah, I'm gonna give this a 5-star. I think this book felt to me like an amalgamation of a couple of other historical fictions that I've read in the past, one being Pachinko by Min Jin Lee. I mean, you could probably see where those ties come from. Obviously, we're following characters that have been impacted by the relations between Korea and Japan. I could also pull some similarity with like The Women by Kristen Hanna because this is another kind of a story where we're highlighting women and their role in this war and how these types of stories, you know, went so long just being like underrepresented in media. Like no one was really talking about this stuff. And then yeah, just with, you know, this author Eve J. Chung's own personal experiences thrown in there as well to add more layers with following characters of mixed ethnicity and like, you know, characters that come from all over and just seeing how there can be so much confusion with that, especially when we have like a war going on. Yeah, this was so good. Everyone pick up this book. That was just absolutely incredible. What a wonderful way to start this reading vlog. I'm ready for my next 5-star read though, and I think I'm gonna pick this next one up from my June TBR. It's actually right here. I'm gonna pick up This Kingdom Will Not Kill Me by Ilona Andrews next. I have really high hopes with this one. I think like 99% of the people that I've seen read this book have absolutely loved it. A lot of you guys have told me you've loved this as well, and I've just had a lot of reader friends that usually have very similar reading taste to me read this and be like, I'm obsessed, and then end up going through Ilona Andrews' complete like backlog after reading this one. So I'm, yeah, gonna dive into this one next, doing a little bit more of a adventure fantasy story. But essentially the premise of this one, in case you haven't heard about it yet, is we have a protagonist who is really into this book series. She really loves it, but the book series has gone unfinished for a very long time. I always think of something like Game of Thrones. One day though, she wakes up in this fictional fantasy world and she has to figure out either like how to go home or figure out how to finish the story and try and support these characters that she knows from her books and she loves, but now they're like in front of her in real life, in person. And so this just sounds like a really fun story, probably something that I need after reading something really, really emotionally heavy like The Young Will Remember. I'm excited. I have heard that the writing style in this is kind of a little bit unserious. Like obviously we have a very serious plot, and I've heard that the world building is kind of intense, but then apart from that, I've heard that, yeah, it's just like the tone of it feels lightly humorous and just a little bit unique in that way. So I'm excited to dive into this one. Let's see if we can get another 5-star read. Okay, I am 150 pages into This Kingdom Will Not Kill Me. So what is that? Is that about like a third of the book, I want to say? This book is split up into 4 parts, and I am currently in the middle of part 2, so definitely getting more into the story at this point. I am having fun with this so far. I don't have like extreme feelings either way. I feel like I'm just kind of enjoying the ride so far, but right off the bat, I do think the writing style is kind of fun and quirky. It almost reminds me a little bit of the lit RPG genre, and I don't want it like, it's not like Dungeon Crawler Carl whatsoever, but I do feel like we're getting a lot of detail about a lot of things with the writing in this, and that I feel like is just giving me maybe a lit RPG vibe, because it feels a little bit like step by step-ish, because we are observing everything. Maggie, our protagonist, is very observant of everything that's happening in this world, so we're getting a lot of detail in that sense. But it makes sense with what is going on with the story, because Maggie, as a reader who really loves this fantasy series and fantasy world that she has now woken up and found herself in, it does make a lot of sense where she would look around and observe things and be like, hey, that matches the book, and like that doesn't really match the book, or that's not really what I pictured that to be. So I think her kind of oversensitivity to reacting to the things she's seeing around her makes sense, right? Like if I personally dove into a fantasy world of a series that I had read over and over and over and over again and felt like I knew the world completely in my brain, I would do the exact same thing. You know, I'd be like, oh, I pictured that as a darker blue, but it's a lighter blue in this reality of the world, you know, just stuff like that. So right off the bat, we're getting a lot of information, and we are kind of getting a lot of info on different characters, like lots of different characters in this world. We've met so many people right off the bat, even if it was just from a quick kind of like cursory look at someone. I feel like it is, you know, a little bit of information to take in at the beginning of this book, but I'm not minding it. I am enjoying seeing this fantasy world from like a fan's perspective. And then on top of that, in the writing style, there is this kind of light banter, a light humor. I wouldn't say it's like laugh out loud funny. There have been some moments that have made me kind of smile, kind of breaks you out of the serious stuff that's happening in the plot. So I am enjoying the kind of little touch of humor in this. And Maggie as a protagonist is really fun to read about, because as she's jumping into this medieval world, she is so self-aware that she does not come from this time. So there are moments where she will make references to, you know, things in our modern world culture, but then she'll be like, oh yeah, no one here understands that, because like no one here knows what this like TV show is, or no one knows what this is, you know? So I feel like while there are moments where she slips up in that way, there are also moments where she completely knows how absurd of a situation this is and uses that to kind of make light of things that are happening sometimes. And the sort of clash between modern day humor and medieval humor is entertaining for me to read. Honestly, a lot of interesting things. We were really just kind of thrown into the story immediately right off the bat. There was no warming up to it. I was thinking with a synopsis like this that, you know, we would spend some time with Maggie in the real world, kind of get to know her character, kind of her day to day before we get transported into this fantasy. But we do quite literally wake up in this fantasy world. From page 1, we're already in there. So it's like there's no warm up to it. We just dive right in, which I didn't know how I felt about it at first, but I do kind of like the feeling of just being thrown in, kind of feeling that jarring moment along with our character. And I also, yeah, I mentioned I do like Maggie. I also like how she's not really stepping into this as your typical fantasy character. She even makes comments about this when she realizes like what has happened. She's not stepping in as a chosen one, or, you know, the princess of a whatever, the exiled princess of whatever who's running away, kind of like your typical fantasy protagonists. She is jumping into this world as an actual nobody. She doesn't actually belong in any of the royal families, but then at the same time, she's also not like an expert assassin or an expert thief and stuff like that. She's just really truly herself, a regular schmegular woman from our modern day world. And I feel like in that sense, it also makes her very much more self-aware. And I like how she knows the fantasy tropes as she's going through the story. It kind of feels fan fiction-y in that sense. It's definitely a story written for a fantasy lover who knows and loves all of the fantasy tropes. And it's just a lot of fun seeing Maggie go through all of these things. So I am enjoying this. I'm going to continue reading and see where the rest of the story takes us, because there are so many things that I am intrigued at right now. On one hand, like, we don't know what's actually going on and why Maggie's in this world, and then on the other hand, there are actually a lot of interesting bits in this fantasy story that I want to see resolved, and I want to see how these things play out. So there's just intrigue on all sides, and I do think so far this is very well done. I will say, if you're kind of like a casual fantasy reader, you might not love this because there is a lot of reference to fantasy tropes. There is a lot of info dumping at the beginning of the story, but again, like, if you're a true fantasy fanatic, I feel like you would enjoy those info dumpy moments at the beginning just because you're seeing them from the perspective of a fantasy lover. So it feels truly like fan fantasy. Yeah, I'm gonna stop rambling. I'm gonna continue reading this. Multiple hours later. I have about 100 pages left in this book. I feel like my brain is in overdrive. Like, my brain is working so hard to keep up with this book. And on one hand, there's so much I'm loving about this. There truly is. There's a lot in this that is really fun and creative, but I feel like I haven't been able to just like sit back and fully enjoy it because my brain has constantly been needing to work on remembering things throughout this entire book. It's honestly, I'm a little bit worried that this book has only recently come out and the second book in the series probably will take a while, because there's no way I'm gonna be able to retain all of this information in my head for when the time comes for the second book to release. Like, there's just no way. There's so much to remember. It's not only just a lot of lore about our main characters and even secondary characters, but all of the kind of insignificant characters, let's say, that only appear for one scene or one page or just a short little moment. We get a lot of information on every single character. And I was saying I was having fun with it at the beginning of the book for the first 100 pages, 150 pages or so, and I still stand by that. I think it was really fun, but I think I just expected that feeling to stop at least like midway through the book, and for just everything to calm down, stop introducing new characters, new lore, all of that at such a quick pace for the second half of the book, and just let what we've already learned develop. But the info dumps just kept happening throughout the entire book all the way up to this point. I'm hoping the info dumps stop now because we only have 100 pages left, and it feels like we're kind of at that moment where everything's gonna go to chaos, you know, typical fantasy. But yeah, my brain's been needing to work really hard to retain a lot of information. And I feel like as the reader of this book, I'm just feeling stressed out the entire way through because Maggie, our protagonist, is just constantly 10 steps ahead of me because she knows so much more about this fantasy world that she hasn't even told us about yet. Like, she is an encyclopedia for this fantasy world, and I love that for her, but it's making my brain hurt a little bit. This book is really fun. There's a lot of fun, like, political maneuverings that are happening in here. There's a big part of this story that revolves around trying to stop something from the book actually happening because it's something bad that will affect a lot of people negatively. And now that Maggie knows the characters personally, she obviously doesn't want all that stuff to happen to like all of these good innocent people. And so because a big part of the story is trying to stop something from happening, like trying to stop something that she knows is going to happen from happening, it almost feels like a reverse murder mystery where we know that a certain thing is going to happen. We kind of have fuzzy details of how that will happen, but we're trying to figure out the more intricate details so we can now go in and stop it from happening before it does. So it's kind of reverse murder mystery in that way. And I feel like that idea is just, it's something so fun to read. That being said though, at this point, I'm fully invested in what happens at the end of the story. It's also a beautiful sunny day outside right now. So I might just hop outside and finish this book while enjoying some sunshine. She's done. So yeah, I think my thoughts were kind of consistent throughout to the end. I will say there were a lot of fun, exciting moments in those last 100 pages. The way things came together actually wasn't really the way I was expecting, which is really fun. There were a lot of little twists and things at the end there that honestly were, just really exciting to read. And this is the type of book where when you read the last page, the last sentence, you will be like, okay, but where's the next book now? Because it does leave you in a little bit of a predicament, and that's all I'll say about that. Overall, I think this was very cleverly done. I thoroughly enjoyed the experience. There are definitely some characters that I connected more to, and some characters where I was like, this is just too much information. I cannot care about everyone equally. Like, there's only so much space in my brain and my heart for characters. And so, yeah, there were some characters that really stood out on the page to me, and some other characters that I was like, I feel like I don't need to know your backstory at this point in time. So that being said, I'm gonna rate this a 4-star. Definitely very enjoyable, a very cleverly plotted fantasy story, I will say. Again, like with the reverse engineering murder mystery kind of a vibe, I felt like there was always something to be interested in while reading this. So that is This Kingdom Will Not Kill Me. Wonderful, had a lot of fun with it. I'm gonna pick up another 5-star prediction now for our third and final read this week, and that is, oh my goodness, I'm so excited to read Into the Blue by Emma Brodie. I have been seeing everyone read this, and I just need to see what the fuss is about. I also want to see if this book will make me cry, because I've seen a lot of people just sobbing while reading the end of this book. I've heard it's kind of like the favorites in the sense that it's kind of this toxic romance love story where these two characters might clash and everything, but at the end of the day, they always find their way kind of back to each other. They feel very like magnetically drawn to each other. But instead of ice dancing, which the favorites was, this is like SNL comedy skits, but then somehow tie that into like love that can transcend time and space. And I've heard so much about this book, but also I feel like I've heard so little. Like, I don't really know what this is about at the end of the day, and I don't really know the vibe of it, and I don't know whatever, but I just know that so many people have connected really deeply emotionally with this, and a lot of people have rated this very highly. So I'm gonna pick this one up, see what it's all about. I'm not gonna start it immediately. I need some time to kind of process This Kingdom Will Not Kill Me, but I'm probably gonna start this tonight in bed, so I'll probably update you sometime tomorrow with kind of my initial thoughts and hopefully a better actual plot synopsis for you once I get into it a little bit. But I'm excited for this. Let's hope we can round out this week with another perfect 5-star read. Good morning. I did read 70 pages of Into the Blue yesterday, and I am definitely liking a lot about this so far. It's not like a god tier book yet, but I'm only 70 pages in, and I feel like we still are just starting to learn about our characters, so I am still very optimistic about this one. I think so far I am really enjoying the writing style. It does feel a little bit more literary. It doesn't feel like a rom-com, you know what I mean? It's definitely more of a drama sort of a romance, which I really, really love. But for a little bit of a better synopsis about this book, we follow AJ, and she is like in high school on the brink of going to college, and all of her kind of ambitions and dreams at this point have honestly been kind of crushed. She always thought she would go to Brown. She always thought she would get a scholarship or a sponsorship because she plays soccer, and she thought she would have this future at Brown with her friends playing soccer. But just at this really crucial time in her life when she was supposed to be going out getting scouted for these sports sponsorships, she broke her arm, and so she's unable to do physical activity. She's unable to perform in her sport anymore, and so she feels very aimless at the beginning of this book, and she always thought she would be able to, get out of this small town, get out of her family. There's a lot of like tough family stuff happening at home too. She doesn't have the best father in the world, let's just put it at that. And so right now, the only thing that she has kind of going for her is she's working at this video store, this video rental store. She likes watching the show called Nauticals, and she also likes writing fan fiction about the show. So that's AJ. And one day while AJ is working at the shop, Noah walks in, and Noah is 4 years older than her, and he is 100% a Nepo baby. He comes from a line of very successful actors. He actually has relatives that are in the show Nauticals that AJ really, really loves, and so they come from two very different backgrounds. He's very wealthy, she's very much not, and at first the two of them kind of seemingly clash a little bit, but because of certain circumstances, the two of them do find themselves kind of drawn to one another, and they find themselves in this situation where they start training in their improv and acting skills together. So they're doing improv exercises, they're learning how to kind of like feed off one another and connect with one another, and right off the bat you can see that they have something special going on. Like, Bowie? Anyways, yeah, they have something special going on. They have this kind of immediate connection with their acting. They seem to have this just really good intuition of what the other one is thinking, what the other person is about to do in their skit or their scene. And that is the setup of this book. From the official blurb that's also on the back of this book, it looks like something will happen between them. The two of them will separate for 7 years, and like Noah will disappear out of the blue into the blue. Out of the blue. And then, yeah, years later in the future, they'll kind of reconnect because I think they've been cast on the same show together. And so they kind of have to face their connection with one another again, work with one another again, and establish this, like, yeah, acting connection with one another. I love theater. I love acting. I love anything to do with this theme. So I kind of knew right off the bat that I would enjoy a story like this. I had a very similar feeling with A Stage Set for Villains. Obviously, very different genre, very different mood. That is a very atmospheric romantasy, but there are honestly some similar things just in terms of, I guess, the way that we're establishing connection between characters using this improv, using this kind of like line, this chord between our two actors that you kind of push and pull on and you know is there and you feel it and you just both kind of disappear into your own little world of your own. We're getting some of that, and I love that. I do love that vibe so much. And so far, I feel like our characters do have this instant connection, but because we're paralleling that with all of the improv and acting stuff, it feels believable for me. And maybe that's just because I'm a theater nerd myself, and so I understand that pull of like when you're on stage with someone. Like I did a little bit of acting, I did more dancing, but even with dance still, like you have this super sense of where everyone physically is around you and what they're doing. And when you're on stage together, you do feel this like different kind of connection with other people that you don't feel otherwise in kind of like a normal offstage situation. And so I am truly believing, yeah, this kind of instant pull with our two characters. I think the writing style is definitely helping with that too. It's not really in your face and it's not forcing you to like completely fall in love with our two characters right away. It's more just a realistic look at kind of the subtle things that two people can do to kind of like draw each other to one another. So yeah, I am liking this so far. Obviously, I'm only 70 pages in, so we'll see what happens. But so far, things are looking very promising. The way this tension is written, I can genuinely feel it through the page. Oh my goodness. Just made it to part 3. I'm pretty sure from the structure of this book with how it's going so far that it's a book written in 4 parts. I'm at part 3. I'm about halfway through. I don't even know what to say about this other than just, I don't know, like yearning, tension. Oh my goodness, it is unbelievable. I do think, as I mentioned, we did have kind of a slow start with part 1. Like part 1 was good. It was definitely a good setup, but it wasn't like, oh, gut-wrenching. But part 2... we had those types of moments where it feels like you're really intruding on a private moment. Kind of reminded me of how I felt while reading Daisy Jones and the Six, where you feel like you're just an audience member. You know, you're watching, technically you're just watching 2 people performing on stage, but the connection that they have on stage feels so private and so intimate that you feel like you should look away. And there are a lot of moments in here where it's like our characters will be communicating with one another, but they'll be like, they won't be saying the words that they're actually saying to each other, you know what I mean? Like they're kind of just saying these things to each other in character, but in their minds and in my mind as the reader. Like I know it means so much more. Oh my goodness, that is done so well in this book. Just like dialogue lines and looks like across the room, little subtle things that you know mean so much more than what they appear on surface level. Yeah, this is living up. Anyways, I can't believe that was part 2. What the heck is gonna happen in parts 3 and 4 if part 2 was already that intense? I'm equally parts scared, but equally parts excited. guys, I did have to take a little bit of a reading break because I had to film a podcast episode. So it is a couple hours later, but I have, I think, maybe around 80 pages left. I'm in part 4, so I'm pretty much at the end of this book. I think all of my feelings are the same. The way that Emma Brodie has written the tension, the yearning, the ache for one another, I feel like is just incredible. I think she has nailed that emotion, and just overall the pain I feel for these characters is so deep and so real. And this is one of those stories where you will want to grab your two characters and just like push them toward one another and be like, just be together. And on one hand, that might be really frustrating to read about, but on the other hand, I feel like the way it's done here, it's like you get why. Like there are ways around it. You're kind of still like, it doesn't matter. You could just love each other and be together. But the characters do have, you know, their own reasons why, and their motivations make sense. And while it's frustrating to read about, for me at least, it's kind of that good frustrated feeling of like, yes, I do want to read about these like difficult moments, and then like hopefully by the end of it you'll find your way back to one another, you know what I mean? So I mean, at the end of the day, that's definitely a sign that confirms I am emotionally invested in these characters and like what's gonna happen to them. So I'm just gonna stay here in this chair. I've been sitting in this chair for so many hours today, especially with the podcast recording that we just did. I've just been plopped down here. But I'm just gonna continue to be plopped down here, and I'm gonna finish Into the Blue. Genuinely, I don't even think I have anything else to say about this book. Like, I think I've said it all, and I feel like I haven't even said that much about this book, except for just, you know, like the intense, extreme emotions that this book has made me feel. This was great. This was beautiful. I genuinely have no more thoughts. I was just reading the end of this for the vibes, if I'm going to be completely honest. This is the kind of love story that I am so into. I am so into. So if you have any other books that you've read that you know that are like this, please give me those recs in the comments, because these are the types of romances that I am craving these days. Now, that being said, I'm not going to give this a perfect 5-star. It's giving me 5-star feelings, but there was a moment in this 4th act where I was like, maybe this is not perfect. I'm going to give it like a 4.75. And the only reason for that is there was kind of this extended spice montage moment that just stretched a little bit too far from my personal preferences. And I will say, to be completely honest, I like how Emma Brodie writes spice. I actually really enjoyed like the first couple of spice moments in this book, but yeah, there were just a few too many. Like that part of the book just extended a little bit too long, and I feel like some of that just could have been cut out. Get the page count down a little bit, and this book would have been perfect for me. So just being a little bit picky, gonna give it a 4.75, but yeah, this book was incredible. Will be in my heart for a very long time. I feel like this is one I want to reread. Maybe I should do like an audio reread of this one, because I feel like it's one of those books that like every time you read it, you will get more out of it, because there is so many, like, as I mentioned, these hidden communications of these characters trying their hardest to talk to each other, and talking to each other is so hard, but they find these alternative ways of speaking their feelings through their acting, through their performance with one another. And yeah, I just feel like you could probably analyze every single one of their scenes together multiple times, and you would find new meanings in them every single time. That's just how the writing is in this. Yeah, 4.75, nearly perfect read. This was so good. Thank you, Emma Brodie, for writing these words and printing them out for us all to read. I guess I'm gonna leave you guys here for now. That was such a good reading week. Oh my goodness, we had a 5-star, a 4-star, and a 4.75. That's pretty much a perfect reading week for me, if I'm gonna be completely honest, and I hope you enjoyed this reading vlog. So that being said, if you did like this video, please leave me a like and a comment. If you don't know what to comment down below, give me some more 5-star recs. Maybe we'll try to have another perfect reading week at some point in, like, I don't know, the next month or something. If you like me, subscribe, do that bell thing, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!